This next item is to hear a report on the state of homelessness in Novato from our Novato response team and provide direction to staff, if any. And I'm going to first call on our city manager extraordinaire, Mr. Adam McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. This item was directed by the council at your last meeting, where you asked for an overview from city staff perspective on what programs are available, what are some of the challenges and opportunities to address those that are experiencing homelessness in our community and of course across the county as well. You're going to hear from the police department tonight, but I just want to remind you and the public, too often the police bear the burden of this as from a visibility perspective. Just remind that this is a societal problem, and it's every department in the city and every department in the county, and all of us as humans bear a responsibility in this matter. So although you're going to hear from the police department, this by no means is a police issue only. So Chief McCaffrey, you have a couple of opening remarks, and then Sergeant Bates will walk us through the presentation.
Thank you, City Manager. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Good evening, Mayor Ackland, Mayor Pro Tem Lucan, and the rest of the City Council. The goal of the presentation tonight will be an overview of the homeless problem in Novato and Marin County, as well as the services available to them and the challenges in dealing with the issue from a legal standpoint. Although law enforcement, as City Manager has said, is the most visible entity tasked with dealing with this issue, homelessness is not a singularly law enforcement issue. Where we have seen successes in dealing with this issue is when we see other entities getting involved, government and non-governmental, and working together, taking on a holistic approach to what can only be described as a societal issue. So I'll go ahead and turn over the virtual podium to Sergeant Alan Bates, who oversees our Novato response team, and will be giving the presentation tonight.
Welcome, Sergeant.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thank you, Chief, Mr. City Manager. My name is Sergeant Alan Bates with the Novato Police Department. I currently supervise the Novato response team. I want to echo the City Manager's statement. It's a little bit counterintuitive to have a member of the police department providing this presentation, but the Novato response team works hand in hand dealing with the homeless problem that we have here in the city. So we do represent a group of people that go out and do our best to find housing and resources for those in need. I want to also say thank you for the opportunity to speak about such a large issue, one that affects everybody in this community and one that's nationwide. The Novato response team began in approximately 2012 as a unit of highly motivated individuals dealing with problem-oriented policing, finding issues that are kind of outside the scope of normal patrol duties, and working to find long-term resolutions. Since 2012, this group has morphed almost into an entirely homeless-related issue unit, doing our best to solve quality of life issues. As the Chief mentioned, the presentation that you're about to see, it's only about 10 slides. We're going to scratch the surface on a lot of information that has to do with homelessness and do the best here to focus specifically on Novato and the County of Marin. Apologies for having technical difficulties. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to work on that and get that fixed for you. My apologies.
Did you want to send the presentation to Laura if you think she might be able to get it up?
I appreciate that, Madam Mayor. I'm going to use that as a backup plan.
Okay, sounds good.
There we go.
There you go.
Every other year, County of Marin and counties all over the United States conduct what they call the point-in-time count. Last time that this was counted was in early 2019. So we're coming up on the next point-in-time count. This is something required by the federal government, Housing and Urban Development. The important thing is that much like a census point-in-time count dealing specifically with homelessness, gives a robust view. In fact, the report is about 85 pages long, discussing the nuances of homelessness throughout our county. I would suggest that anybody that's interested in this topic, anybody that's working towards this topic, quick Google search point-in-time count Marin County homeless. You'll find the report available online. The information I'm going to provide you this evening has to do primarily with the statistics that were learned in 2019, but also the information that the Novato response team has gathered in the last several years. You'll see there currently, again, as of the 2019 count, approximately 147 unsheltered homeless in the city of Novato. That number is down from 169 2 years prior. We will have that new count starting here in a number of weeks. And I look forward to providing counsel or anybody that's interested with additional information about the more recent count that's going to occur in the next few weeks up to the end of February approximately. Understand too that when I said 147 unsheltered, I'm not discussing the total number of homeless people in the city of Novato. There are a number of people that are in shelters now, and those shelters range from emergency shelter, domestic violence shelters, temporary shelters, and transitional housing. But as far as the 2019 count is concerned, 147 that are unsheltered. We, as the Novato response team, regularly interact with approximately 80 homeless individuals in the city. That number changes very quickly and almost on a daily basis. A little bit of information might change somebody's opinion, some people's opinions about homelessness. 73% of the homeless in this county are originally from or were Marin County residents prior to becoming homeless. There's a lot of talk out there about people coming from out of the area to reside here, and it's that statistic shows the vast majority are actually from our county. And then 25% of our unsheltered are chronically homeless. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. Definition through housing, through HUD, is definition of chronically homeless is somebody that's been homeless for a year or longer, or somebody who has experienced 4 episodes of homelessness in the last 3 years and is also what they describe as the head of household and has a condition that prevents them from providing for their family. So we have 2 versions of chronically homeless there. Somebody who's been homeless for over a year, or somebody who's experienced several periods of homelessness in a short period of time and is unable to care for their family. Now, Novato response team, as the chief indicated, works with a large group of county service providers and nonprofit organizations. And I would be remiss not to say that those county service providers that we team with are some of the hardest working in the county. I can't say enough about the folks that are the boots on the ground, the administrators, and the other folks, nonprofits and from the county, that provide services tirelessly 7 days a week to the people that are most in need in our city and in our county. This list is not comprehensive at all, but the reason we listed quite a few for you to see is to understand that there's a significant number of people providing outreach and services to the people that need it. Each of those units and teams that you're looking at have their own specialties, but none of them are only one-trick ponies. So our approach to homelessness generally starts from a phone call from a member of the community that says they see somebody camping in a tent, sleeping in a car, that kind of stuff. And when our dispatch receives that call, our officers will go out and do a quick assessment of those people. And each of those interactions is individualized. Every member of this community is individual, and every member of our homeless community is individual as well. Now, just a quick breakdown here, as it pertains to housing, the Housing First model that's been accepted nationwide utilizes a system known as the VSPDAT, or the Vulnerability Index Service Prioritization Decision Tool. Think of it as a triage. They go out to the individual homeless folks, do a fairly lengthy assessment on them, deals with their behavioral health, their mental health, their substance abuse, past criminal records, and housing needs, and prioritizes those who need services the most to get them the housing that they need. We, on a regular basis, the Novato response team coordinates with outreach teams on a weekly basis, sometimes multiple times a week, to triage resources and determine who's most in need of help. And that doesn't necessarily mean housing, that could be other resources as well. As you would expect, we work closely with the mental health teams. The Marin Mobile Crisis Team has now expanded their hours and has expanded their availability to anybody in the county. And this team works very closely with them. And the last section here, behavioral health. It's a bit of a misnomer. We separated behavioral health from mental health, but the truth of the matter is that behavioral health encompasses substance abuse and mental health concerns. So when I say, or when we write behavioral health things, we're talking about those that are suffering from substance abuse. Now remember, our approach to these folks is individualized. They could fall under one of these categories, all four, and even more. The Pivot program and Prop 47. 2014, a voter-initiated proposition passed, and that the idea of the Prop 47, a lot of people have heard about, was reducing or decriminalizing certain offenses to limit the number of people that are being incarcerated. The money saving behind that would be set towards social services and give them the opportunity to avoid the criminal justice system, period. In early 2020, the city of Novato realized their first benefit of Prop 47, and that was in the form of a recovery coach. He's employed by the Multicultural Center of Marin, and he's funded by a grant that's controlled by Marin County Health and Human Services. At the end of the day, the goal is to prevent those with behavioral health issues, remember, which is mental health and substance abuse, from entering the criminal justice system in the first place. Our goal is to step back as law enforcement and allow social workers take over the lead as it pertains to homelessness, mental health, and substance abuse. The pilot program that we began, which is Pivot, Prop 47, Improving Lives via Opportunity and Treatment, embedded this recovery coach or social worker directly with the Novato response team to provide what we describe as fast-track resources that he has available immediately. The goal here, as I said, is to step back from sending uniformed officers to deal with issues that are outside of the criminal justice system. So we've talked about a little bit of legal stuff here. I want to get into the housing first model. The best quote to sum it up is the best way to get somebody off the street is to get them off the street. In years past, programs required those who were transient or those who were homeless to work on substance abuse or behavioral health issues prior to being selected for housing. The problem with this is in the word transient. Many of our homeless population don't stay in one place for very long, and trying to get them the resources they need was nearly impossible. So the housing first model, which has been adopted internationally, is putting up very good numbers. The idea being, turn that idea on its head, get people stabilized in a place with a roof over their head, and then start working on the issues that push them into homelessness and prevent that from happening again. We understand some legal status, some outreach status. Our expectations as far as housing is concerned. Let's talk quickly about encampments and temporary housing. The fact of the matter is there's not enough shelter beds in the county to support the amount of homeless that we have in the county. Looking back at the point in time count, we had over 1,000 homeless, unsheltered homeless people in this county, and not even 10% of that, not even 10% of that number available to those who required emergency or temporary shelters. It's not a secret also that some homeless individuals are service resistant. I indicate here on this slide that was due to past experience, but we have to understand that, as I said earlier, our approach to these folks is individualized. Everybody has different needs, and no two homeless people, just like no two people in this community, are the same. As far as difficulties in encampments and temporary housing, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, in an effort to prevent the spread of COVID-19, the CDC established guidelines, which limited the ability to move and to house people. But shortly thereafter, Project Room Key became a reality for the County of Marin. The idea of Project Room Key was to move people that were COVID vulnerable into hotels temporarily to keep them in a shelter-in-place kind of mode. Now that Project Room Key has morphed into Project Home Key, and it's not unfamiliar to this council that Project Home Key's goal was to provide money to counties to purchase buildings, or it could be commercial buildings, or for hotels to house the homeless and act as shelters. I think it's important to note at that point that the city of Novato is a leader in this county when it comes to housing and resources for homeless. We have a great partnership with Homeward Bound and the myriad of other organizations. Those agencies and those organizations receive significant benefit from the city of Novato, and as it pertains to affordable housing as well, the city of Novato is a leader. Back a little bit towards the legal side of homelessness, I would venture to say that about 2 years ago, not a lot of people had heard of Martin v. Boise, but in a very quick, short order, there's a lot of research, and it's one of the quick first things you see on Google when you type in Martin is Martin v. Boise. Now, without getting into all the details, I want to keep this brief, but between approximately 2008, 2009, and the following decade, a number of homeless individuals in Boise, Idaho were cited and arrested for camping on public property, including streets, sidewalks, and parks. When they were found guilty in court, they appealed their decision to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals covers just about every state west of the Mississippi, including California. When the Ninth Circuit heard the case, their decision was that arresting or citing somebody or otherwise criminalizing those sleeping in public property without alternatives, generally meaning shelters, that law enforcement agency was violating the 8th Amendment of cruel and unusual punishment. So understand that this is a significant case change and case law decision. Counties and states throughout the US petitioned the Supreme Court to get clarification on what alternative specifically means, on what public property actually means. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court declined to hear the case, meaning that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision stands. In a nutshell, and of course there's more details here, but in a nutshell, if there are no alternatives for a homeless person, they cannot be criminalized for sleeping in a public place. So enforcement, I want to make this very clear to the public. I want to make it very clear to council. Being homeless is not a crime. There's no violation of the law for not living in a house or having a shelter. I also want to make it very clear that our goal is to gain voluntary cooperation from anybody that we deal with, whether it's a criminal, whether it's a homeless person, or whether it's a person on the street and a citizen that we're interacting with. Our goal is always gaining voluntary cooperation. It is impossible and inappropriate to believe that we're going to arrest our way out of our homeless situation, especially one that's city, county, state, and an international problem. Also important to understand that camping on publicly owned land or in a city park can be enforced on a case-by-case basis. And finally, any criminal violations that we file here at the police department or any police department or sheriff's department in this county is sent to the Marin County District Attorney's Office for prosecution. Challenges. Many of these are not going to be a secret. The reality is there's insufficient amount of temporary and emergency shelters in this county for our homeless population. The best way to get somebody off the streets is to get them off the streets. There have been significant changes to law in the last few years that, while simultaneously the public at times will believe law enforcement is the first contact for a homeless individual or somebody suffering from a behavioral health issue. Those recent changes in law have really pushed this fact that we need to move away from uniformed officers handling these types of issues. There is significant divide in our community about how to handle the homeless issue, but no one opinion is accurate. This is such a robust and multifaceted issue that it's going to take a large team, much larger than the slide you saw earlier, to put a dent in this. COVID-19 has done nothing more than brought in a big sea of fog over all of the work that we're trying to do. It's the biggest speed bump that we've experienced in the past years working with the homeless, and it's really hampered our ability to provide services rapidly. I mentioned earlier that we're always looking for voluntary cooperation and voluntary compliance. That's a time-consuming issue. It's very difficult to come into somebody's livelihood, whether that be a tent or a vehicle or a shelter, and explain to them that their situation is not beneficial for their future. So establishing these individualized outreach plans is a time-consuming process. And no secret here, but law enforcement alone will not solve the problem of homelessness. Such a multifaceted issue. I'd strongly suggest anybody with requesting any further information, refer to our website, novato.org/homelessness. I'd also strongly suggest reviewing the point in time count and looking for that point in time count 2021 coming out in the next few months. We'll be working closely with county officials and a survey company to assist in that count to really get an accurate number of our current homeless problem. On behalf of the City of Novato Police Department, I appreciate the time. Anytime that we have the opportunity to interact directly with the public, I think it's beneficial for all involved. So I'm happy to come back anytime. Look forward to continuing this process and really making a change for our community. Thank you very much.